presume you can see the Maplesync logo on the screen?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great. So good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming to this talk hosted by Civic Tech Toronto. My name is Jeff Evamy Hill. I am a Master's of Design candidate at OCAD University in the Strategic Foresight and Innovation program. I will be speaking to you today about Project Maplesync and the futures of economic cooperation. Now, I just want to preface this by saying that I do not claim to be the preeminent expert on the topic, but I hope you'll find this angle of Maplesync interesting. So Maplesync is a proposal for strategic economic planning done collaboratively at a large scale. For example, think of the nation as a firm or company, or better yet, as a cooperative. I contend that this line of thinking gives us new vantage on problems of allocation, coordination, and planning that I believe need to be reckoned with to build a better world. Tonight, I will discuss some of the future trends that demonstrates the necessity of something like Maplesync to start. Then I will distill them into gaps and what-ifs for its design. And then I will discuss some of the aspects of how I've designed the first iteration of Maplesync, the white paper, and how anyone can get involved. This is a work in progress, and I am actively looking for feedback. Firstly, we ask ourselves, could the economy be conceived as a knowledge problem? And if this were the case, how would we improve how the economy integrates, processes, and dispatches knowledge in service of us, humanity, and not of itself? It could be a subset of the question, has the internet fulfilled its promise? An economics prof at University of Waterloo, where I did my undergrad with Skydra and some other people who gratefully came to this chat, and this professor is an entrepreneurship advisor as well. He put it to me this way: is there a way to start mutually exchanging information to create a productive result that informs all participants? I would add, so that they have a meaningful stake in the high-level economic decision-making that affects their lives. This is a question I've been pondering since 2013. I wrote my undergraduate thesis on this, which is basically the economic calculation problem in the field of political economy. That problem is about how we use information and traditionally prices to bring together dispersed information and coordinate separate actions in an economy. This is a big debate in the 20th century, and it seems to be coming back now. I'd be happy to talk about more in the Q&A. But so a definition of Maplesync itself as it stands is Maplesync is an open source Creative Commons project to generate a set of tools and approaches influenced by collective intelligence, which just means bringing the best of human and machine intelligence together, that helps large groups of people anticipate and plan for their preferred economic futures by automating the mundane functions and democratically elevating critical decision functions. We can break this down some more. Essentially, what I'm saying is, how do we provide groups of people with the tools to come together and direct their high-level economic futures, where at present, I believe these functions are either overly centralized in large entities or ad hoc. It begs the question, why care about thoughtfully harnessing the power of economies? I have put together three main trends with the hopes that it helps to lay the case for Maplesync type endeavors. Firstly, to what degree does planning, something that has that's a bit of a black sheep outside of the firm for various major 20th century reasons, if any, what degree does planning, if any, have in a functional progressive society? First, we must discuss who are the stakeholders in the future. Short-termism, along with geographic immediacy, seem to be the principal biases upon which society operates. It is very concerning, given the degree of stress our economy is putting on the environment and social conditions. What kind of future are we creating for the billions, no trillions, of humans who hopefully will come after us? Ethically, our economic systems must value the future and therefore must break out of its short-term bias. Planning is a way to do this. I think are markets allocating correctly, let alone fairly or sustainably, is a really interesting question. This is Kate Raworth's donut model of economics. It visualizes an inner and outer ring of social foundations or human needs that we cannot go below, and an outer ring of ecological ceiling or limits that we cannot go above. The safe zone for our economy and society is somewhere between the two rings for all categories, as you can see, and we are not doing a great job. We are overshooting, we are undershooting as well. But some might argue this isn't the purpose of capitalism, and it performs very well by its own measures. However, we know from bubbles externalities like how pollution is not inherently covered in the price of oil, for instance, and the crashes of bubbles that erase huge amounts of value, that this perfect efficiency is not the case. So we see the graph here is just showing how things can be completely overvalued, creating huge bubbles. So that and that just gives an estimate of the over under of valuation, that graph there. So what I'm saying is, given technology and knowledge we have today, how can we run our economies in a more fair and sustainable way? I argue that there must be ways to share information better, plan and coordinate so that we can stay within these boundaries and basically not have as much fluctuation, destroying value. Finally, do people really have a say in the economic decisions that affect their lives and their children's lives? I observe that the main pathway we have as citizens within a consumer society to have a say in large-scale economic decision-making is to consume through pathways set up by private entities owned by ever larger corporations, as a example. We have companies like Walmart, whose effective GDP is larger than some countries. In fact, it's larger than the Soviet Union's GDP at its height, and larger than countries like Finland today. There's an ability to plan, but why do we let planning only happen in small islands of firms instead of across them? And why don't we leverage the collective intelligence for a whole society for the high-level decisions, for the reasons in the past 3 slides? There's often little productive coordination between them. We're not talking about a command and control structure like Gosplan in the Soviet Union, the planning entity there. But essentially what I'm raising is whether the processing power of the economy to allocate and coordinate, is it too centralized? And is it using the right tools? And is it integrating the right knowledge? For an introduction to this, a very light introduction, I recommend the recent book, The People's Republic of Walmart. It's on the screen for a light introduction. But to move on from this, these 3 key insights of the future are the short-termism, markets, and centralization as big concerns that spur Maplesync. So what actually inspired me to go ahead and write a white paper on Maplesync, which you can see on the website? Well, my interest in the topic resurfaced last November when I discovered that numerous researchers had come out with books and writing on the economic calculation problem. For example, CyberSyn was a Chilean project from 1971 to 73, that you see on screen, the kind of command center of it, aimed at constructing a distributed decision support system to aid in the management of the national economy. The project consisted of 4 modules: an economic simulator, custom software to check factory performance, an operations room, and a national network of telex machines that were linked to one mainframe computer. The point of CyberSyn was to build an actually fairly decentralized system in which local data is gathered, decisions are made, fed into a system that enables high-level planning, but to create a short of real-time feedback loop. I read a book about CyberSyn, though I'd known about it for a while, and decided after reading that book to make a project in Canada, recontextualizing it to this 21st century context. And here we have Maplesync. So if we are recontextualizing how we might aid in the management of a large-scale economy, what are the gaps and what ifs for a design brief? Well, in terms of gaps, planning already happens in islands, but where is the liberty in the process? Secondly, economic direction is largely top-down, but quality information can be bottom-up. Thirdly, externalities, which I spoke about before, prices can be wrong, and they're a manifestation of economic information. And I think really interestingly, in terms of collective intelligence, there's different kinds of collective intelligence, not just markets. There's hierarchies, communities, democracies, algorithms, and even ecologies. There's different ways to look at the problem that are where the problem is so caught up in free markets only. Markets are essential, but they're not the only solution to our problem of distribution, allocation, coordination. And finally, this via negativa idea, looking at what isn't there, from Nassim Taleb. We can imagine that we are missing what advanced societies like Star Trek, like we see in Star Trek, would need to have to sort out allocation and optimization problems by thinking about it this way. So what if people could indicate the high-level direction of the economy they participate in? What if we could use collective intelligence to optimize efficiency, particularly of how our economy fits into the social and environmental donut? And what if solving the latter two could be a gateway to enrich democracy? I show the picture of you've seen the kind of the icon that's on the top of the screen the whole time, the digital campfire, and that's a 3D version of it. What's interesting about is it's the metaphor of how do we organize a society, kind of using the metaphor of how we used to gather around a campfire to plan and to distribute and to organize, right? So it's how do we kind of bring that traditional kind of concept of egalitarian kind of gathering to really decide our economic futures? How do we bring that into a 21st century digital or collective intelligence digital meat space idea? So in terms of what you came here to say, which is what is Maplesync itself, what are we really proposing as the physical things, like tangible things, and that's a work in progress. We really got to get the problem identified first, but I can talk about some things. So first, I am interested in collective intelligence platforms for participatory and democratic economic planning processes, which means in terms of Maplesync as a collection of different initiatives, this could take the form of an open national strategic plan, or provincial strategic plan, or regional city that is really open source, collaborative, everything interesting like that. Open shadow budgets, like how or alternative budgets that could be used to judge and show the delta between the mainstream in a really specific way, and using big data and complexity tools to help find pathways to prosperity. So basically, problem identification tools. So we have meaningful entrepreneurship. Um, there's a couple other points here about feedback infrastructure and general catalog. These are from really great thinkers, Evgeny Morozov and Saros. I forget the first name, but basically there are ideas that are on the table around the world. What I'm trying to do is focus them in a Canadian context, as an experiment. Right, we're here, I'm here. It's an interesting opportunity. Secondly, I have ideas for smaller things that use the same principles as I laid out, and these are more background tools, like a tool that would help people value these externalities to help startups with a critical prediction, like a prediction market of when to launch, or help smaller companies grow in sustainable ways by providing strategy and marketing support, like economic gardening, and using best practices from across an economy, both in terms of money making, and it doesn't have to be an but environmental and social goals and things like that. I think a really good example of something that's been hacked together recently is if anybody's seen the McDonald's ice cream machine hack, where a fellow put together an app that figures out if vanilla ice cream is out of service in every McDonald's across the United States. Well, what's interesting about that is a little hack that could be what I'm thinking in Maplesync is that having that information transparent and in the open allows the traveling ice cream salesman to know where to go that day to better optimize their business. Right, that's a very, very small thing, and but it's just a small example of really simple things that can be done here. And finally, what I think is really interesting, I believe there is a dire need for more simulations to be designed and used to assess and both and could project the cone of possibilities of the implications of the decisions forward. These could model the value flows of an entire economy, which is a great project out of the US, or find opportunities for optimization with regard to environmental or social needs, or find entrepreneurial opportunities for pathways for prosperity. I think that the idea of citizen grade simulations to help citizens participate in planning and identify the impacts of the decisions is really important, as long as they are transparently kind of open source design. So you can read much more about these specific project ideas. I have a list of them in the white paper towards the end. There's more stuff like that, but I wanted to get the big picture to you today. So we'll wrap up here by talking about future directions. How can you help? I'm looking to formalize this into a really functioning initiative into 2021 by building out some prototypes and drawing attention to the problem like I'm speaking to here. I'm interested in creating a group that is fascinated with coming up with solutions for this set of problems. And there's some things here which are issues kind of at hand. But for me personally, alongside this, I am finishing my degree, working on my major research project, which is about the futures of this problem to help kind of expand the solution space some more. So what is Maplesync? Finally, it's to wrap it up here, it's an idea for technology. And in terms of a concrete thing or goal to immediately create, it is creating strategic economic plans, either shadow or official, that are made through mass participation with a transparent remixable process. And I know that there are very similar initiatives to this, and I want to build on them. But I hope you see the different angle over the course of this presentation. Secondly, it's an education project to grow a garden. The more I think about it, I believe Maplesync is an education project to inspire thinking and responses to the economic calculation problem that will eventually form an open source suite of social software for things similar to the first point, but which we can't really imagine yet. And finally, Maplesync is a catalyst and anchor for experimentation with regard to economic calculation in the face of environmental and social stresses, and a scaffolding so that the pieces come out of this experimentation could conceivably be sewn together into various platforms to be replicated in unique ways in contexts around the world. So it's using collective intelligence to improve economic outcomes for present and future. It's economic democracy. It's the economy as a cooperative. Thank you for listening to my talk today, and I look forward to sharing questions or answering questions.
Thanks, Jeffrey, for your presentation.